Om Ajnanantimirandasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaste, my name is Swami Chidananda and welcome to the continuation of the Science of Yogic Philosophy course. In the last few modules, we've really spoken about karma, which is the energetic entanglements we have with this reality. And as long as we have karma, we have to continuously engage in reincarnating back into the world of Prakriti and being far away from realizing our true self. And as we engage with this reality, we start to create impressions of how we start to view this world. So different type of samskaras start to arise. Samskaras of lust or anger or insecurities or various other impressions that are all stored in our subconscious. These samskaras then affect our ability to do our dharma, affects our ability to do our spiritual swadharma, which is to love. Because ultimately to love means that we have to go from a space of the art or atma. But as long as we engage with the ego, we're only going to be acting from a space of material desire. So as long as we have some samskaras that cloud our ability to connect to our atma and give power to the ego, we will not be able to do our dharma properly. So an ancient spiritual technique has been developed to help us to not let the samskaras cloud our ability to use our discernment. And that technique is called mantra chanting. Samskaras can be looked at as negative frequencies or vibrations. And these negative vibrations are stored in our subtle body. So whenever these negative vibrations are given the chance to come up to our consciousness, they cloud our atma. Now the great yogis, what they have done is they've created positive vibrations to combat the negative vibrations. So for example, if there's a mountain of negativity, you have a pick. And that pick, as you start to chip away at that mountain, starts to dissolve that mountain. But this takes time and effort. So it's important to also understand that samskaras are just not negative. You can also have positive samskaras, attributes and qualities that you've cultivated for lifetimes, qualities such as patience, integrity, humility, and compassion. So as we start to do this mantra chanting practice, what it's going to do, like a pick chopping away slowly at a mountain, that vibration of the mantras start to dissolve the negativity and increase our positive samskaras. So we are much more able to walk this path in a clearer way. So that being said, I will now teach you how to do the mantra chanting. The mantra chanting practice is something that has been passed down for thousands and thousands of years. And if you remember from the first module, we spoke about how these great yogis heard these divine vibrations within themselves about how to view reality. So these vibrations, when put together, create mantras. When the mantras are chanted, they create a positive frequency inside of us that dissolve the samskaras and make us shift to a new reality. So as I said before, if you want to go from channel 1 to channel 2, you need a remote. So if you want to go from Prakriti to Vaikuntha, you need a mala. That's a nice way of looking at it. Now the mantras themselves are going to be very unique and different. As I mentioned earlier, every yogi heard this divine truth in a different frequency. It's to ensure that the divine cannot be put in a box. It's to ensure that we all have unique ways of approaching the divine. So the mantra that you resonate with could be different. Some might like to chant just Om. Some might like to chant Om Namo Narayanaya. Some might like to chant Om Namah Shivaya, and so forth and so on. In the next module, I will teach you a specific mantra that is chanted in our tradition that carries the grace of the yogis that I've chanted before. But for the purposes of this specific module, you can choose to chant whatever mantra you feel comfortable with. So to do the mantra practice, you would need to procure a 108 bead mala. Okay? It's important that it's 108 beads. It is said that we have 108 energy points in our body. And as we chant the mantras, it helps us to transform from more base level of thinking to higher conscious thinking. It affects all of our energy points. That is why we chant the mantra 108 times. So the mala itself should have 108 beads plus what is called the guru bead. So the guru bead plus the 108 beads is what makes up the mala. And you can get this in many different stores in your neighborhood, online, many different places. In our ashram, we also sell malas that we bless before giving it to people. So many different ways to procure a mala. Now, once you've gotten a mala, it's also important the type of wood or crystal that's used. Usually, if you are vegetarian, you should not buy a tulsi mala. So tulsi is a type of wood that, let me rephrase. If you're a vegetarian, you should buy a tulsi mala. If you're not vegetarian, then you should not buy a tulsi mala. The tulsi mala is made by a particular type of wood called tulsi. And in our tradition, it's said that if you are not vegetarian, it's better to chant with a crystal mala or a different type of wood mala or even a rudraksha mala. There are slight energetic differences between the malas, so you will also have to feel the different malas and make a decision that makes sense for you. Sometimes in different traditions, they'll use different types of malas. So if you're a Shaivite, you might use rudraksha. If you are more esoteric in nature, you might use more of a crystal bead. Ultimately, as I said, they're not huge differences, but just very important if you're not vegetarian to not use a tulsi mala. Okay? Now, when you get the mala, what you want to do is you want to place the mala on your middle finger. The index finger represents the ego. So as we are doing the practices, it's important to disengage from the ego. Each of these other fingers represent corresponding chakras. So you can also do it on your ring finger, but for most of us, the middle finger is the most appropriate. It's connected with our throat chakra and it helps us to be more clear in how we speak and how we are engaging with the world. And it's much easier to use the middle finger. But the most important thing is not to engage with the index finger, because that represents the ego. And this whole practice is to drop from the mind to the heart. Okay? So as you put the mala on your middle finger, you're going to start with the first bead after the teacher bead. Okay? The teacher bead is there to help us to keep track of where we are in the practice. And so maybe few thousand years ago, they didn't have calculators. So this is a much easier way to keep track of how many beads we've done. So you start with the first bead after the teacher bead, and you take your thumb and you chant the mantra and you pull down on the bead. You chant the next mantra and you pull down on the bead. Chant the next mantra and you pull down on the bead. So it's important here that you're not pushing up, but you're pulling down. And the teacher bead is coming in front of you and slowly going down this way, okay? It should not be going on the other side. It should not be doing this. The teacher bead should be rolling down in front of your chest and going around, okay? So you're going to continue to chant using the thumb every time you say the mantra. So you can go, for example, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namo Narayanaya, or you can go Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and so forth and so on. Okay? So you're going to go all the way through the mala, and you're going to stop at the last bead before the teacher bead. Okay? It's important that you never cross the teacher bead. The reason why we call it the teacher bead is because the teacher guides us on our journey. In the same way, this bead guides us in our mantra practice. So when you get to the teacher bead, it's also to show humility, that by not crossing over the teacher bead is to show that even though I'm evolving, the teacher should still be venerated. There should still be a humility to those that have helped us on our path. So it also awakens humility when we come to the end and we don't cross over. Now, I would suggest, if you're starting the mala practice, to do 108 rounds of whatever mala you choose once a day. Now, if you start to do more than 108 rounds, then you just go the other way, okay? You don't cross it. So it's a pendulum. You go this way, and then you go back. You go this way, and then you go back, okay? Now, that's a very simple practice. Now, as you start to use the mala, try not to chant different malas with the same bead. Because try not to chant different mantras with the same mala. Because every mantra, while leading us to the same divine truth, they do carry certain frequencies. So the goal is to, with one mala, not create and dig many holes. It's to dig one hole and go deep in and find the water. Can the other holes help you to find the water? Sure. But you don't want to disperse energy in that way, because each mala is encoded. It's like an onion that has many layers. And so as you go deeper, the layers will open up more and more and more for you. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't chant many different mantras. You can, but if you decide this is a practice I really enjoy, then I would say use one mala for one mantra and do it as a private sadhana or practice. And if you want to chant mantras, different mantras as you go into work, sing mantras on YouTube or different events, no problem. But have one mantra for you that you go deep into. Now the mala will be energized with the mantra. So when it's energized, it's also important to not touch the floor or touch your feet. Try and keep it somewhere safe, or you can even wear it to embrace that energy if you're going to different places. So both options are also available for you. Now in the next module, I'm going to teach a specific mantra that comes from the tradition that I belong to, which you might find to be a very beautiful mantra to go deeper into. So much love.